We are back for another episode of the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. Jackson Fyda alongside me, Jerry Walker. Always exciting to talk some soccer on this podcast today. That's usually what the two of us are here to do. And Jackson, we had quite a weekend of action.
Yeah, a lot happened.
Oh, absolutely. But before we hop into that, always like to ask, how you doing? How's the weekend been? How's your
We're,
Monday morning going?
we're good. Had a fun little weekend. Played another game. My team has a shot at winning the title now in our Nisa Nation League, so that's pretty exciting. We just need one result to go our way, and yeah, going to the rodeo later. So excited
Oh,
about that. Reno
okay.
Rodeo, yeah.
Rodeos are always a good time.
That's what I'm
Oh,
saying. My girlfriend was making fun of it. And I'm like, come on, there, it's awesome.
Rodeos are fun. Seeing people just ride around on bulls, horses. My favorite was always the mutton busting. Get
Got
some
a
little
little
kids on
kids, yeah.
the hold on, see how that goes. But
hmm
obviously, hopping back into this, big news for the U.S. men's national team this weekend. CONCACAF Nations League semifinal on, what was it, Thursday? Beating Mexico 3-0. We'll start on that one. That was something.
Yeah, I mean, the U the game itself was crazy. I'm first going to start and say the U.S. looked so good compared to Mexico. They just looked far superior. I know Mexico is missing Shuki Lozano, they're missing Tecatito, but the U.S. just looked far better than them. I mean, I remember we were watching on Mexican television. Thank God for that, by the way. And all they could pick out for their like key moment was in the first half. They had one cross and Matt Turner punched away. That's all they could find for it. And I was talking to my dad about it. I'm like, that's their memento revolucionario. Like, that's a revolutionary moment. They had nothing going. Like, the U.S. just looked far better. 3 nothing was well more than well deserved. And
Mm.
if we want to talk about the fireworks in the game, we finished 9-9, 2 red cards for both sides. And the first Mexican red card, I'm forgetting who got it. You just
Cesar Montes.
Cesar Montes just completely swiped out Balawan. And then obviously that fight ensued. McKenny went into it. He ended up getting his shirt ripped, got a red card. Probably could have been some other cards in that. I mean, that was a scuffle and a half. I think Eunice Musso is like the first American in there. Everyone just hopped right on in. And then obviously the second red card involving Des and Ariaga, them pushing each other. It was a heated game. Mexico US games always are, but it wasn't close like I feel like they have been recently. Feels like right now the US are just going up while Mexico is just crashing.
Absolutely. The gap is just growing between Mexico and the US, and the opposite of what we've seen for at least most of our time growing up. It's been Mexico kind of with that big gap, and now the US has shut it down, and US looks like the kings of CONCACAF. But
Mhm.
the other semifinal, first of all, I want to say on that Weston McKinney red card, as a Leeds fan, he showed more heart on that moment in that 30 seconds than he did playing for Leeds. So a little disappointed to see that, but
Well, it's the US, man.
no,
I feel like
absolutely. You always step up for the country.
yeah, and I feel like the group is so tight knit that I feel like they show more passion when they play for the US than when they play for their club. I feel like across the board they do.
Absolutely.
McKenny 100%. I'm agreeing with you. Showed absolutely nothing for Leeds because at least Tyler Adams showed some shit. Brendan Aronson showed some passion.
Yeah.
McKenny he just walked around, collected the check, and then left.
Yeah. Hard to argue with that. But also last week I mentioned Ricardo Pepi. He had a goal like what 10 minutes, if that, or 5 minutes after he came on as a sub.
Yeah,
What do you think of him? He's been solid because I know he provided well in the final, which we'll talk on in a second. But
yeah. He's playing well ever since the World Cup snub. He's kind of just exploded. Like he's just kind of been like, all right, I didn't make this. I'm going to use this to go and be the best player at my club in the Netherlands, and then to suddenly start scoring a lot of goals for the U.S. And even though Balawan's our starter right now, Pepe is good. He's a good option. I mean, that finish against Mexico, he just took it right past Ochoa, and you see he didn't immediately when he took the first touch around him, he didn't immediately hit it because he knew Ochoa would still been able to save it. He took the extra touch, so Ochoa goes down and then is scrambling, and then he can easily just pass it in. Like the confidence level to do that, especially against a nation that you almost played for as well. the nation that your family represented, to go in and score a goal, make it 3-0. I mean, that's huge for him. He's looking good. He's going to get a transfer probably to PSV this summer, it's looking like. Yeah, he's a good option for the U.S. up front. He's really kind of coming into his own. And people need to remember he's young. He's younger than I am, which is crazy to think about. So, yeah, I mean, if he keeps doing what he's doing, the U.S. is going to have not just one option with Balawan, but two very good options up top.
Absolutely. It's dangerous attack looking forward for the U.S., but other semifinal on Thursday, Canada, Panama, kind of went as we assumed. Canada won 2-0. Two guys we touched on last week, Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, both get the goals. So I think that was a pretty straightforward one there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Canada by far looked like the better team.
Yeah,
I remember watching that, and it's like, yeah, it kind of felt droll watching it because you kind of just knew what was coming. And yeah, 2-0, eased into the final.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in that final on Sunday, yesterday, U.S. Canada, and it seemed like U.S. kind of took it to them, 1-2-0.
Mm-hmm. Yep, all over them from the start. And then, do you see that? Do you see the game by any chance? Were you watching it?
Not.
Walker Zimmerman, center back for Nashville, had a left-footed volley from about 25 out that almost rocketed in. When I saw that, I'm like, if Zimmerman is doing that, we're going to win this game easily. Yeah. And then right after that, a few minutes later, Richards gets a header goal. We're looking good. Ballo got his first goal for the U.S. U.S. looked really good. Not only did they get the goals, and they were able to basically just – Canada couldn't do anything. The only one who was trying to do anything looked like was Davies, but it's kind of hard to just take on the whole team. At the end, that's kind of what it looked like he was doing. He was just shooting from range, trying to run, but the U.S. looked good. Scally looked good at right back, coming in for Dest. Reyna looked really good. Ballo looks good up top. It's looking good for the U.S., and they won 2-0.
Looking at the stats, kind of not surprising the U.S. won, but it's more Canada-dominated possession. 62% to the 38 of the U.S., which typically you think, oh, team with the more possession will win, but U.S. just took much better advantage of all their chances and seemed like the more dangerous team from the highlights I saw.
For sure. And they were more than happy to let Canada possess the ball, keep doing their thing, because if you're not going to go forward and attack, there's no danger to it. So, yeah, the U.S. did a really good job, I think, of getting the goals early, and then just finishing out the game.
Does this Nations League win, in your opinion, solidify the U.S. as the current kings of the CONCACAF?
Yes, 100%. I don't think you could argue it any other way. One team out of CONCACAF got out of the group stage, the U.S. One team won the last Gold Cup with their B team, the U.S., and now they have back-to-back Nations League titles. The only thing is those Canadian fans who claim that they won qualifying because they finished first place. That's the only thing the U.S. technically didn't win. But, I mean, they're by far the best team in CONCACAF. Herdman even said that, Canada's coach. He's like, they're the big dogs. They're who we're chasing. You look at all the players they have playing at top level in Europe. Mexico and us, we're chasing them. And it's true. Right now, the U.S. has the better players. They weren't in great form for their club teams, most of them. But when they've come together for the U.S. recently, like you kind of talk about with McKennie, they show more passion, more fight, and they are by far the best team in CONCACAF at the moment.
Yeah, it's not surprising, honestly. The talent they have, all the experience now. Used to be U.S. team was majority MLS players, while that league was still kind of a little bit behind. Now they're getting that European experience from a young age, doing great things. You see Pulisic is playing well, Gio Reyna, Pepe, Dest, all these guys are just thriving, and kind of that experience is helping them make that next step towards possibly contending with the European teams and South Americans in a few years' time.
Yeah, which is good to see heading into 2026. The U.S. just looks like they're continuing to get better. And with Balawan up top now, that's a huge addition. I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to watch a lot of him this weekend, but he looked very good, very comfortable up top. Not only that, but the team seems to back him already. So when you have that addition and everyone continues getting better, that's huge news because you got 3 years to go until the World Cup. So if you can just keep getting incrementally better, it could be a very good World Cup for the U.S.
It really could be. And it seems like the U.S. now has their coaching manager issues sorted. Greg Berhalter is back. Don't know if he ever really went away. I know they had some interim managers after the World Cup, but Or did this move surprise you at all?
I at first kind of did. I thought the U.S. was going to go away from him because if you're going to not renew his contract and you're going to have a coaching search for half a year, oh, I just don't. I just didn't think they'd go with the same guy. That's just a waste of resources, a waste of time, in my opinion. But then I started seeing reports before, like all the players are like, "Oh, we want Greg back. We want Greg back." And I was actually going to write an article because I didn't think it was going to happen. I was going to be like, "Why Greg Berhalter should come back as U.S. coach," because all the players were saying this. And then you see right before he was linked with all these other places, and then Club America, apparently he was going to get the job offer there, and they turned it down because he was in the final pool for coaches. And I was like, "Oh, hello." And then a day later, watching on Mexican television, and I hear them say that Greg Berhalter is coming back. And right then, my phone is blowing up. The Athletic, ESPN, all these places reporting it. And I was like,
Well,
I was kind of like, wow, thinking about it, because with the Gio Reyna thing, I just never thought he'd be back. But honestly, I'm okay with it. Like, I really am, because I feel like the 3-0 victory against Mexico and the 2-0 against Canada is because of what he's put in place over the last few years. And the team loves him as well. And I feel like for international managers, what's more important is a cohesive unit rather than certain level of tactics. I mean, Berhalter got outcoached against the Netherlands, but we were just worse than the Netherlands.
yeah,
So, like,
the Netherlands are your team overall. It's more
so when you say we were outcoached, it's like, well, we were just – they're better in every category than we were. If you manager, players. So I'd honestly – I'm more than happy with Greg Berhalter coming back. He's accomplished everything he basically could have, I feel like, so far. He's won every competition bar the World Cup. And with that, we got out of the group stage when we were playing England, Wales. He's had very good showings as a coach. The players love him. So I'm honestly happy he's back. I don't think we're going to get anyone better. Like, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the kind of the perfect fit, and to an extent, he's laid out all the groundwork, and he's brought these players together in the first place, and kind of they've grown under him. And kind of it was a little bit shaky. I wouldn't say necessarily shaky, but it was a little suspect when he went away and US wasn't playing as well, in my opinion. There were small things that weren't going their way here and there, but bringing him back obviously worked out really well this weekend. Was it an interim still this weekend?
It was BJ Callahan, and he's going to coach through the Gold Cup too. But I feel like maybe the news of Berhalter returning also kind of helped things a little bit.
Everybody, kind of that momentum. And to an extent, I was thinking it's kind of like how Graham Potter, when he left Brighton, he had left them in a perfect place for someone else to come in and take over and continue winning matches and, in the US's case, trophies without Berhalter. So I think it's kind of smart to bring him back. It'll be interesting to see what happens if the US goes and wins the Gold Cup without him. Is there any possibility that they kind of say, actually, we're going to stick with this guy who's helping us win at the moment?
Well, they can't now because he signed a contract through 2026. And granted, it is U.S. Soccer Federation, and they have.
You never know. Crazy things have happened.
Yeah, they're kind of a joke sometimes. But I think what this means for BJ Callahan, if he goes and wins the Gold Cup, is get that man a managerial position somewhere. Like, he deserves it. If he goes and wins 2 competitions, like, he deserves to be more than an assistant at that point. I'd love for him to stay with the US though, because I think he has a certain level of input that Greg might listen to. And when you see, he played Gio in the center of the park during this game, something Greg didn't do a lot. And he kind of brought in some guys that Greg wouldn't bring in a lot. And you could say that, it was just because, I don't know, like Greg was favoring experience, like yada, yada, yada. It doesn't, I don't know. But BJ Callahan showed a certain level of vision, I think, with these last couple of games, that he deserves a future head coaching position. And maybe one day could return to the U.S. if he does well somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing him as potentially like the U20 manager, if I don't know the contract situation or anything about that really, but as a guy who has that still role in managing for the U.S. side that could potentially come in after 2026 if all things go wrong and Berhalter goes out, but kind of just keep him in the system. Like you said, he does know the players. He does have possibly that input that Berhalter will listen to. So something to think about there. But outside of, I mean, outside of the U.S., another team made a managerial decision in CONCACAF today, a couple hours ago. Mexico has fired their manager, Diego Coca, after what, just 4 months?
7 games. Yeah.
That's a little embarrassing, I would say, a little disappointing for Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico right now, they are I don't even know how to describe it because it kind of like I hate the Mexican national team. You know, I'm a US soccer junkie. You grow up hating the Mexican national team, but I feel bad watching what's happening, you know? Like they're in absolute disarray over there. The players threatening to leave camp early, losing 3-0 to the US, getting absolutely outshone. That's something that I can't think of a time where I've seen the US with like actual A teams just dominate them like that. And then you fire your manager after only 7 games. They're in trouble. Like from top to bottom, they're superstars. Their star players are aging out. Youth players wise, you have Diego Lainez, who's incredibly inconsistent, and Marcelo Flores, who's yet to do anything. Really, I mean, Santi Jimenez is pretty good, but apart from that, they don't really have a lot coming down the pipeline. I mean, I wouldn't even say they're the second best team in CONCACAF right now. I think Canada's kind of taken that position right now with their players and the way they're playing, and their manager. Herdman's a good manager. They've kind of got it figured out, and they're getting better. And Mexico is just falling without a trace, it feels like. I mean, firing a manager after 7 games, that's before the Gold Cup, which starts in a week. And it's just a sign of bad things to come, I think.
It's never an ideal time to fire a manager. First off, that short of an experience, but right before a major tournament that you kind of need your country to do well in after suffering losses to your arch rival over and over again recently. But we will see what happens there. You mentioned the Gold Cup. You have expectations. You expect the U.S. to win, or you think they might stumble here and there?
With the roster we have, I'd expect us to stumble, you know. But it is the Gold Cup. I still think we'll go far. Like our C/B/D, I don't even know what you call it, team should still beat the vast majority of nations. The one who should win it is probably going to be Mexico or Canada because I assume they're going to bring more people. I saw Mexico's roster last night. It looks like they have a pretty strong team going to the Gold Cup. I don't know if Canada's released their final one yet. They might let players like David and Davies get a little break, not go to it. I'm not sure what their plan is yet. But I mean, last time I thought the U.S. wasn't going to end up doing too well when I looked at their roster, and they ended up winning the whole thing. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping we get 2 for 2 this summer as well, and the U.S. can go and win another Gold Cup. But it's going to be interesting to see how that squad does because it's mainly going to be MLS players. And the only one who's really going to be back is like Matt Turner in goal. So it's going to be interesting to see how that U.S. team kind of comes together. And it'll really speak volumes about the depth the nation has if we could go and win it again, though.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, I'm looking at all the rosters now. It's Canada doesn't have Davies or David playing, so that's a big knock on them. Mexico does look the strongest outside of I really don't know who else could really compete because it's weird seeing Qatar in there, but we all know why that is. So. But yeah, this seems like it's Mexico's kind of to lose just based on the squad. So it's going to be interesting to see. Definitely thought the U.S. would be putting out a stronger team, but apparently not. So we'll see. But you think so? You say Mexico, probably, maybe Canada. It's going to be fun. When does it start?
Well, it's still like group stage starts, this Saturday.
Okay.
The U.S. Jamaica in the first game, but technically the Gold Cup started this past week because we had the prelims.
Yeah.
First round games, if you want to call it. It's basically qualifying, but it's happening in Miami. Get to see some of those smaller nations playing off against each other. Puerto Rico got a win, so that was kind of cool to watch.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we still have, I want to say, 3 matches left, 3 teams still to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like it's Guadalupe versus Guyana, Martinique versus Puerto Rico, and St. Kitts and Nevis versus French Guiana.
Mm-hmm.
So still some action to go before the full-on group stage gets going, but it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to watch, at least some of the matches. Hopefully you get to see a U.S.-Mexico just because of the rivalry and the aggression that we saw in the last match. I'm sure that'll continue over for sure.
And the fan support. I don't know. I mean, without Mexico playing in a serious game, there's just no fan support. Did you see the Mexico-Panama game? Any look at that? No fans whatsoever in the third place game. Fans just didn't show up. First of all, I'm going to go back to Nations League real quickly for that third place game. Mexico won 1-0, but Panama had 2 offside goals, one of which was a chest trap bicycle kick from Annabelle Godoy that was incredible.
Was that the one that they all went over and started celebrating? And then, yeah, I saw that.
And I was saying to my little brother, I'm like, I feel like with a certain point, if you score a good enough goal, it just shouldn't be offside, you know? I should throw that rule in there where you're like, if it's that good, you don't call it back. Because it was just such a good goal. And Panama, honestly, I'm not going to say they outplayed Mexico, but they were right there with them. And that's another sign of how Mexico is struggling right now. So heading into this Gold Cup, I'm hoping for the Gold Cup's sake that Mexico keeps advancing, because when they don't, the fans don't show up. The U.S.-Canada game was not nearly as full as if it would have been Mexico-Canada. That place would have been packed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping for the Gold Cup's sake that Mexico kind of goes far, because then you get more fan support, because they have fan support that most countries around the world don't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with how Mexico's playing right now, I'm not sure. And obviously, if you're a Gold Cup organizer and you're involved with CONCACAF, you're hoping it's U.S.-Mexico in the final. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if Mexico can kind of figure their shit out heading into this, and if the U.S. can go far with their team. So hopefully for the Gold Cup, though, because those are the two main fan-supporting nations, I'd say.
Oh yeah, those are the big two. Those are the big draws that CONCACAF always wants to see. It's those teams playing each other. So
yeah, so hopefully they go far and meet in the final, because that's good for the tournament. Yeah,
absolutely. Moving away from CONCACAF now, we also had the UEFA Nations League this past week, and there are some exciting matches. Netherlands versus Croatia, first semifinal on Wednesday. Croatia ended up winning 4-2 after extra time, but what a back and forth match that was. Netherlands took the lead in the first half. Croatia then scored 2 pretty quick goals in the second, and I thought it was all over until Noah Long rose like a salmon and headed the ball in on the very last kick of regulation to send it to extra time. Don't know if you caught that match at all, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the ending was crazy in regular time, because it looked – you just feel like at that point nothing's ever going to happen, because it very rarely does. And then, yeah, the ball comes, and he basically like passed it into the net, I want to say. Like, it looked like he just passed it in. 2-2, we go to extra time. At that point, I kind of thought the Netherlands were going to take it, because you're at home, you have that momentum. But then Croatia's good, man.
And really experienced in extra time.
Mm-hmm. Hard to beat them when it comes to added minutes, for sure. And yeah, they took care of business 4-2.
The other semifinal, Spain versus Italy, I wasn't able to watch this one at all. I was at the Nuggets parade, met up with another Vendetta guy, Garrett, so good times there. But Spain won 2-1, scored 3 minutes in, then it was level. Then it was a late winner there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you caught that one.
I did. I kind of missed the end of the game, sadly. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about it beforehand. I think we both said Italy was going to win this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Spain looked good in that game. And yeah, you felt like the final was going to be a really good matchup when you saw the semifinals, the quality that was going on, and just the kind of like the competitiveness gave me a good feeling for the final. It turned out that feeling was right, for sure.
Absolutely. Final, Croatia versus Spain. Not a whole lot happened in regular time. Ended up finishing 0-0 after extra time. And I kind of had a feeling this one would go to penalties. It seems like any major match, final, or anything Croatia's involved in somehow goes extra time or penalties. And sure enough, it did this time. And Spain took the win, winning 5-4 on penalties after a couple misses each way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the craziest thing is Spain had a chance to win it. What was it with the fifth kick, I want to say? And then Laporte just smacked it off the crossbar. At that point, you're like, okay, it's got to be Croatia's time, like that's God right there working in their favor. He wants them to win it. And then who missed the next? Was it Petkovic?
Petkovic. And I remember even the commentators are saying, oh, he's not a great penalty taker. This is why he goes sixth. Sure enough, comes up and misses it.
And then Carvajal, right? Finish it off. Yeah.
A little Panenka.
It was a nice penalty for someone who's only ever taken two, I think, now.
Yeah.
I think he's only taken one penalty before that. Never for Spain either. And then he just Panenka'd it to win it. Like, fair play to you, man. Well done. But, yeah.
I mean, he came on in the 97th minute, so it wasn't like he'd played a whole lot before that penalty shootout. So probably one of his first couple touches on the ball in that match was just a little dink that sent the keeper the wrong way and gave Spain their Nations League title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what was it? They lost the last one to France too in the final, I want to say, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they got their Nations League victory. So they've won everything you can, and technically now because they got World Cup, Euros, and Nations League. So
yeah. And one player in particular, Jesus Navas, became the first player ever to win all four or all three of those major titles for any European side. So impressive there.
Crazy to think about that.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw something that he's been playing for the Spanish national team about the same length that it was either Pedri or Gavi have been alive. I want to say Pedri. He started playing for the national team in 2003, the same year that Pedri was born. So
that's crazy.
Crazy to see there. I wouldn't be surprised if he heads out shortly after from the national team. I mean, there's not much else for him to accomplish there, really, and it's 3 more years until the World Cup, so going to be interesting for him. But another player who I want to get your thoughts on is Luka Modric. He's been so close now. Is this the last time we see him playing for Croatia, or do you think he'll come back and we'll see him at the Euros next year in Germany?
I'm thinking Euros. I think his contract, he's got one more year with Madrid, I think. He's going to finish it out. I think he goes to the Euros, and he not only retires from international, but he just retires.
Retires in general.
But it's still crazy that he can run like that at 37 years of age. Like, most people are done doing that at 34, 33, 32 even. And he's doing it at 37. He's still playing in the highest level he possibly could. And people talk about Ronaldo's longevity, but what about Luka Modric, man? Like, what he's doing in the games, he just looks so savvy, and he's just always there. He's nicking balls off people when they are bringing it down. They don't see him coming, he just nicks it. The passes he can make, just everything he brings with him is incredible. And doing it at 37, it's crazy.
He played virtually every minute of these two Nations Leagues matches. He was pulled in the 119th against the Netherlands after he scored his penalty to make it 4-2. So he may have gotten a minute's rest, but otherwise, it's impressive to see him keep going. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if somehow, some way he continues playing till 26. But for me, I would agree with you. I think he'll retire from the national team after the Euros, especially if they do somehow find a way to win it. Go out on top.
Yeah. They're going to find a way to get to the semifinals and lose another heartbreaking game. And that just seems like Croatia's, like, their calling card at this point is to do really well and just lose a heartbreaker.
Absolutely. Where do you think, because, I mean, we've seen him, he's almost single-handedly brought Croatia to their first ever World Cup final, almost a second, now the Nations League final. Where do you think he ranks all time of midfielders? Because he's got to be one of the top at least 10 ever.
Yeah, I think for sure. And the crazy thing is he wasn't like this when he was younger. Like, people weren't talking about Modric when he was at Tottenham or he was at other places, but what he's turned into over time, like he's arguably one of the
agent like on wine.
Yeah, for sure. And I think top 10 would 100% be reasonable. And of this generation now, it's kind of hard to argue other midfielders over him. I know people used to say Toni Kroos and other names like that. I'm gonna say he's a little bit removed from the Xavi, Iniesta kind of generation. Like they're right before him. I'm gonna say that just barely. Like it's close. But yeah, I think of this generation, he's the best midfielder for sure. And if you look all time, I think he deserves it. I mean, he won a Ballon d'Or. He's got his nation, which Croatia is not a big nation
Not at all.
by any means, and he's gotten them to multiple finals, semifinals. I think he definitely deserves to be in that conversation for sure.
Mm. Yeah, he's definitely one of the best midfielders that we've seen in the last 5, 6 years, hands down. Impressive what he keeps doing year in, year out, especially now at 37, continuing to play every second and getting his team wins somehow, some way. Especially because the whole Croatia tactic seems like it's just drag out games and just outrun them at the end and get a winner. But moving on to a little bit more in Europe, the Euro 24 qualifiers have been going on this week. There's a couple I want to just talk on briefly. Norway, Scotland. Don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to watch that live.
Yeah, I was as well. So for those who don't know, Norway lost 2-1 to Scotland at home in Norway. Holland gets a penalty. Kind of seems like it's going to be Norway's way. Scotland didn't really make much out of it. But then 87th minute, Luke Dykes gets a goal. 89th minute, McLean gets the winner, and Scots are looking very, very good in their group at the moment. I want to say they're top of their group ahead of teams like Spain and obviously Norway.
Yeah, when you think back, yeah, they beat Spain at home. Now they beat Norway on the road. They're looking good right now to go back to the Euros, and they look. That's the spirit they had to not get just one goal, but get 2 goals in the final few minutes. It's almost like they were waiting for Holland to sub off so they could push forward. As soon as that happened, like they got Scotland's got something going right now in qualifiers. They're a fun team to watch too.
They have been very entertaining. I mean, they're 5 points ahead of Georgia and 6 points ahead of Spain. Both those two teams still have a match in hand. But you already beat Norway. You already beat Spain. Those are probably your two hardest opponents in there. Obviously, you'll have to play them a second time each, but they're sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, and they're going to have to go to Spain, which that's going to be a tough game. Spain's probably going to win that one, you'd have to figure. But with them, you never know with how they've been playing. Who knows? And then they play Norway at home now. So, and playing Scotland is no easy task. They've got some insane fan support. So,
yeah, the other one I want to touch on briefly, Belgium, Austria. Don't know if you saw much of that. I just saw the highlights personally, but 1-1. Lukaku stays scoring goals somehow, some way. He does it for Belgium. Doesn't really do it for Inter Milan. He's more of a defensive specialist there, in my opinion. But
great blocks on the line, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Belgium went down 1-0 after an own goal. Lukaku, 62nd minute equalizer. But this puts Belgium in a difficult position. They do have a match in hand, but they're 3 points back of Austria at the moment. And next time they play them, it'll be in Austria. And they have Sweden right on their tails as well. I think it's time to worry for the Belgians.
I don't think so yet. I think there's still so much time to go with these qualifiers. I mean, we kind of just started.
Yeah.
That there's just so much to go. But I feel like Belgium in general should start to not be concerned, but think about the future because your golden generation's aging out. You're not going to have De Bruyne for that much longer. And even when he does play for Belgium, he's not the same. Lukaku's starting to age out. He's still got a good few years left in him, but he's definitely going to age out soon. And you see a lot of these younger guys that they had hoped for. Origi hasn't really turned out quite the way people were hoping he would.
No.
And obviously you have Tielemans is good, but compared to what they had going, I mean, Hazard's done. They gave him a little ceremony. I saw that at the game.
Yeah.
But your golden generation is kind of gone. So I think they should be concerned more so for start thinking about the future. And if they somehow do falter in this qualifying campaign, which I don't think they will, I think they'll end up getting it done, and they'll probably win the group realistically. But and if they find a way to not do well, not qualify, it's going to be a little rough period in the future, I think, for them, because you've had these great players for so long and now they're aging out. You're going to have to find a way to replace them, and I don't think they have quite the same level of talent coming through at the moment.
No, they're kind of, as you mentioned, the golden generation. Typically means it's the best players you've had and will have for a while. So it's not looking good for Belgium. I think they kind of peaked making the World Cup semifinals 5 years ago now. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do anything in the Euros. I do think, like you said, I think they should win the group, but that's more of not because they're that impressive, but it's more kind of the weakness of everyone else in that group, because they're in there with Austria, Sweden. Both of those teams can be a little difficult at times, but not up to the level. And then Estonia and Azerbaijan, which those should be pretty easy either way. I know we got a couple more games today. Interesting one for me, obviously England, North Macedonia. I'm excited for. Should be pretty one-sided, like the England Malta match. Don't want to talk too much on that, but
Don't count out North Macedonia though. Italy decided to do that, and then
I know that was great. I remember watching that live, just celebrating that North Macedonia had knocked Italy out of the World Cup qualifying.
The goal, like what man, it was late too. It was like
really late.
and it was like an on the ground long distance shot, I want to say.
Yeah, it was something absurd that they had honestly had no right in scoring, but
and they did it. I remember the announcer was just stunned. Like everyone was stunned.
Yeah. It's just wild to see, but it is what it is. The other one today that I'm interested in, France and Greece, because obviously France is one of the best teams in the world, but Greece is they have their moments. Honestly, right behind France, they have a match in hand and only 3 points back. So even if they get a draw, it puts the pressure on the French, with the Netherlands only having, I guess 3 points, but as well, but puts the pressure on if Greece can get a result here, and it's in France, unfortunately for them, though.
Yeah, and I think France is gonna probably just tear through them in this game.
I think.
But I mean, it is Euro qualifiers, and you see crazy stuff happen all the time, where certain teams just get some good results, and when you get that going, the momentum builds. You beat no offense to the other teams, but you beat the weaker teams in your group, like Gibraltar, and then you can kind of just skyrocket. So if Greece can find a way to get a result in this game, that could be huge for them, because like you said, they have a game in hand, and they're playing at France, and the rest of the teams in their group aren't that good. Sadly, I mean, I'm Irish, but Ireland's team right now is just I don't even know what to say about them. They also have the Netherlands in there too. So if you're Greece, you do need to pick up some results, and if you can get one today, that would be huge for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hey, Ireland might get 3 points today in the group playing Gibraltar at home.
You'd hope so.
You would think. If not, then the Irish Football Federation will have to take a look at some things for sure.
Oh yeah, huge internal look if something goes wrong today.
It's be bad for them, but looking on to some other stuff that's happened this week, there's been some international friendlies. I don't know if there's any that have stood out to you at all that you want to talk on.
Maybe the Argentina-Australia game, just because of that Messi goal early on. What's that?
Messi skill he had, and that was
absurd. They played that game in China. The whole stadium was just wearing Messi gear, Messi jerseys, chanting for Messi. Felt like it was a home game in China for them. And he scored early on. It was a good goal as well. So, yeah.
Continued showing he's the best player on the planet at the moment. And, I mean, second-minute goal. Now I was seeing something that there's only 1 minute Messi has never scored in of the possible 90, and that's the first.
Yeah.
Coming to the MLS. Might still – obviously looks like he can tear people up still. Maybe we'll see him get that and complete that. And I think I can think of only two. There might be a third who's ever done it. I know Zlatan and Ronaldo have both done it, but add Messi to that list, pretty elite company there.
Yeah, for sure. And did you see, talking international friendlies, the Qatar-New Zealand game?
I did not.
It got abandoned because of racial abuse. New Zealand said they refused to play the second half after claiming Michael Boxall was abused by a Qatari player during the first half.
Huh.
Saying 2 international matches. Apparently another one was abandoned today as well, but yeah.
Yeah, Morocco and Zambia looks like it was canceled, but I'm not sure why.
I'm seeing Republic of Ireland U21s with Kuwait.
Oh.
As well. Wow.
Huh.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I guess one of the other ones, big name teams that are playing, Brazil, they took care of business wearing their black jerseys in support of all the racial abuse that certain players like Vinicius Jr. have been getting, but they're still Brazil. Take care of business. Beat the hell out of Guinea the other day, 4-1.
Did they play that game in Brazil or?
No, that was in Spain. That was in Barcelona.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these teams don't even play in their home countries anymore for friendlies.
No, especially some of the big South American teams. It doesn't seem they're kind of going on tour almost.
Yeah, you always go to Europe. Spain's a huge destination for all of them, I feel like. Or, like, honestly, Saudi Arabia will have some as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything's going on in Saudi Arabia at the moment.
So. Dude, don't even get me started.
But there is one more tournament I kind of want to talk a little bit on that's had qualifying going on, and that's the African Cup of Nations, because there's been some relatively surprising results this past week. I know South Africa beat Morocco 2-1, which is kind of surprising, and country I kind of have a soft spot for random reason, but Equatorial Guinea beat Tunisia 1-0. So did a project on Equatorial Guinea when I was in like 6th grade. So support.
They speak Spanish there, don't they?
I think they speak French.
They speak French? Yeah. That's funny that's your country. Mine's Ivory Coast because I did a country project on them.
Hey, exactly. Right. That's how we support our teams or find our teams. It's small stuff like that. But I don't know. South, obviously, looking at the tables, not too much crazy is happening at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, South Africa winning their group right now is pretty big, but Morocco still has that game in hand.
Yeah, and I mean, in that group, the top 2 teams go through, and there's only 3 teams, with the third being Liberia. So you'd have to expect that South Africa and Morocco will get through there. But
yeah, for sure. And let's see, Zimbabwe's disqualified. Do you know why they were disqualified by any chance?
I do not, but I can look it up.
Yeah, that's interesting because everyone else is playing 6 group stage games, and they only get to play 4 because of Zimbabwe's disqualification.
After failing to suspension imposed on them, I guess they had something from FIFA. There was a FIFA suspension.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's African Cup of Nations for you.
It really is. They're under influence of a third party, so maybe there was some betting of some sort of match fixing. I don't know. It's AFCON. Crazy things happen here and there, and looks like they're suspended for political interference.
Oh, jeez.
The government issues, it sounds like, for Zimbabwe. AFCON.
AFCON's going to AFCON.
I'm excited for the Ivory Coast in the beginning of 2024. It's going to be a good time. Obviously, we mentioned last week some solid players all over Africa and some chaotic stuff that goes on as well. So
it's fun, man. Those games are fun.
Yes, they are. And I mean, there's obviously it's just entertaining. And I mean, it doesn't get covered nearly enough, in my opinion, in the U.S. Obviously, it's Europe, UEFA, CONCACAF, CONMEBOL in South America. I would argue that outside of maybe the U.S., AFCON is a better organization, confederation than the CONCACAF. So I put that as the third best one, maybe after Europe and South America.
Talent-wise, for sure. I think talent-wise, for sure. But what holds Africa back as a footballing continent is unfortunately just the infrastructure, the corruption, all of that, because they have the talent for sure. I mean, think about a player like Gift Orban, who just recently moved from Africa up to Europe, and it's just lighting things up after only 2 years there. And now he's like, I don't know if you've seen any of his highlights, but he's unreal.
Yes.
And he spent most of his childhood just growing up in Africa playing around, Like, because I feel like they haven't developed him like there. He just got his confidence, and now he's just doing what he did in Africa. So when you see an example like that of someone who just gets picked up at a trial, like the level of certain African players is absolutely insane. And if they can just figure out a way to not have the corruption, you not have teams getting disqualified. Obviously, Nicaragua got kicked out of the Gold Cup for it too. CONCACAF has its own problems. We can't really judge, but like, there's just
seems like
there's just so much potential, And I do think an African team will win the World Cup relatively soon. I'm back in Nigeria. I think eventually they're going to get it, especially when you see the Nigerian immigrants living in other countries, England mainly, maybe Ghana too. Ghana's got some going as well. I think
they're kind of getting better.
Yeah, but the sad thing is a lot of that development's happening outside of Africa. And I just feel like there's just the main thing for me. It's the corruption. It's like that's the saddest part, because that's the part you can control. That anyone should be able to control, But it is what it is.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Just looking around, there were a couple other surprising results in AFCON qualifying. Zambia, 3-0 against the Ivory Coast. Somehow that happened. Kind of. Obviously, it's not the same Ivory Coast team I remember watching with Drogba and the Torres. And that team, God, it was what, like FIFA 15 playing as the Ivory Coast. It was over.
Yeah, 2014. Peace Ivory Coast. They were good.
Yeah, Jorginho and
God, he was awesome at Arsenal. He was like my favorite player growing up, believe it or not. I freaking love that guy.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Silky with the dribbling.
He was just nasty. But other results, Benin drew with Senegal with a late equalizer there. Ghana looking a little shaky. Obviously, they haven't done extremely well in the last few years. Did make the World Cup, but before then they've struggled a bit. Some early exits. They drew with the last place team in their group, Madagascar 0-0, which little concerning because now they have one match left, but they're only 2 points ahead of that third place team in the CAR, Central African Republic, and that's who they play next. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy because they've got a good squad.
Yeah,
look at the players they have. They've got like very good players. The Ayew brothers are still around. Partey in the middle. You've got Amarte in the back. Like you've got good players top to bottom. And I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with them. They should be better than they are, I feel like.
Absolutely. Let's see if there's any spicy matchups coming up the rest of this week. That one, otherwise not a huge amount of extremely exciting ones on paper, but this time next week, or I guess those are back in September then. Just 3 more this week, but well. Moving on from all the international talk, is there any other news or anything you want to talk on before we wrap this up?
First of all, I'm going to give a quick little bit of Sheffield Wednesday news because who doesn't like a little bit of that? I don't know if you saw, but Darren Moore, man, is not going to be at the club next year. Mutual termination. The club and Darren Moore agreed to it this morning after getting them promoted. So I don't know what happened. I couldn't find any more details. I just saw a quick little thing announcing his departure. I don't know if anything happened. I don't know if they're planning on getting a better manager to try to quickly move up in the championship, try to get into those promotion playoff places. If they don't think he's the guy to do it, I don't really know, but yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising, especially after he got Wednesday promoted this year in chaotic fashion. But
yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not seeing – hasn't been a whole lot of other news. Obviously, we can talk for hours about the players going to Saudi Arabia. Hakim Ziyech and Kai Koulibaly are both all virtually going there from Chelsea. Maybe Ronaldo was right to an extent that the Saudi League is going to have some of the most talented players. Still don't know if it's going to bring eyes to it. Doesn't help that the games probably start at, 3-2 in the morning here in the U.S., so –
I mean, I guess if you're in Europe, you could watch, like that's realistic. That's not too far. I'm not actually sure how far ahead Saudi Arabia is from most European nations. I'm assuming it's within 6 hours, though. So that's more realistic. And do you see? I mean, UEFA's president came out today and was like, "Yeah, that's not how you do it." He literally called them out. He's like, "You got to build the academies. You got to build the infrastructure. Like this is what he compared it to China, and he's like, this is what happened to them." I think it's a little different because I feel like China is actually trying to grow their league. I think Saudi Arabia is just doing this kind of to get the World Cup in 2030.
Yeah.
Which if they get the World Cup in 2030, that means FIFA amends their own rules. We got our own little. We got more FIFA corruption going on, so I really hope that doesn't happen. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because looking at the time zone, it's only 3 hours ahead of England and so 2 hours ahead of Europe, the rest of Europe. So could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but like talking about those World Cup bids, there's some spicy ones that I kind of really would like to see. I wouldn't mind it going to Morocco, but obviously, as we talked, the infrastructure there's a little bit of an issue. I don't want it to go back to kind of the Middle East after just having one in between, so I don't know if it will. Europe's got some interesting bids. South America one I like: Uruguay, Argentina, Paraguay, and Chile.
Yeah, I feel like that should be the one for sure.
Either that one or Spain, Portugal, Ukraine, and Morocco, in my opinion. I think those have got to be the front runners.
What are we doing with this whole 4 nations, different continents bullshit? Like, when did this start? When did this
doing it too much?
That's why, dude. Sports are great, but there's just so much money involved that it just ruins it. I feel like at a certain point, like
we don't need 48 teams in the World Cup. Even
36.
It's been great the way it has been with 32. It makes it easy planning and all that. And I mean, 48, they were going to go to groups of 3. I think that's been scrapped now, thankfully, because I mean, I loved watching the last day of World Cup group stage every year because 4 teams playing at the same time for their groups. You never know what's going to happen. It's like that. What was it? Japan, Spain, Germany, and Costa Rica. That last day.
That was awesome.
Electric. I know I was on a flight somewhere. I think I was on a flight back to the U.S. watching that on the plane. It was amazing.
Dude, that little brief period when both Japan and Costa Rica were going through.
Oh, electric.
If you could tell me I need 3, can live in a 3-minute period for the rest of my life.
Would be seeing Spain and Germany go out to Japan and Costa Rica.
That was crazy, man. Costa Rica were winning. You're like, oh my God, no way.
It was great stuff. But no, I don't like the expansion. I think it all kind of started with the Euros when, was it 2020 Euros, when they were going to do it all over like 10 different countries across Europe. Yeah, that was the beginning of it. And
England was basically a host. Yeah.
And then COVID happened, so they had to change that around and scrap some of the venues and make it a little quicker around. But I don't know. I like the thought of, say, I know I went to the Euros in France in 2016, traveling around, going to see all these different cities, different parts of the country. It makes it so much easier. You then don't have to get the passports or visas specifically if you're going to as a fan. I don't know. I like it just in one little country, even the U.S., Mexico, and Canada.
Yeah.
Don't know how I feel about that, but
I mean,
all of them involved, I guess. But that's so much traveling.
And they did it because they didn't think the U.S. was going to get it because Donald Trump can never shut the hell up. So that's why they did it. And ever since that happened, you've seen all the – I mean, are you kidding? Like Egypt, Greece, Saudi Arabia, and Iran? That's – are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
That's a potential bid. And honestly, they're throwing Ukraine into the Portugal, Spain, and Morocco bid to get the sympathy votes. But how does that make any logistical sense at all?
No, if anything, just do Spain, Morocco, and Portugal.
Yeah, you go Iberian Peninsula and Morocco's right there. That, you know what?
Because it's easy to get to there.
Yeah, and you can easily go back and forth. It's quick, but then you throw in Ukraine. So you tell me if I'm going to watch U.S. games, I'm going to have to go first game in Morocco, then to Ukraine, and then all the way to Lisbon. I'm going to have to go from that's an unbelievable. But don't even get me started on the Egypt, Greece, Saudi Arabia, and Iran one. That one makes absolutely no sense.
I'm looking at a map right now. Obviously, like I get Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iran because those pretty much all border each other. But Greece,
Yeah, you throw in a UEFA nation just to try to get the
European
the
vote.
UEFA nation, you throw in friggin' Greece.
God, too much money involved and too much nonsense, in my opinion.
100% agreed.
But we'll see. We've known of little issues here and there involving FIFA in the past,
You mean like every tournament bidding ever?
pretty much in the
Yeah,
last
there you go.
decades at least, for sure. It's always a little scandalous here and there. I mean, I guess even some past ones, Argentina, I think, had a sketchy story around their
Dude, yeah.
most.
Sports washing at its finest, that one.
Great time. This is why you always have to follow the soccer world, football world. It's just so entertaining, and you never know what crazy turns are going to be hitting you.
The ultimate reality show, man. It's just
It
being
really is always something to happen. But, Jackson, anything else you want to talk on at all before we wrap this up?
Busquets to Inter Miami. Forgot to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like first one to follow Messi. It's going to be Busquets. Looks like it's all but finalized. We got to get working on that story, but
God,
yeah, we got a lot to do today. But
I don't have a ton of time, but we'll see what we can get done.
I'll get on some of the match summaries and then move on to some of that. But yeah, Busquets Inter Miami. They're trying to get a few more to join Messi, and we'll see if they can take them from last place in MLS, worst team right now, and can find a way to win MLS Cup this year. That would be quite the Netflix documentary.
And you believe in miracles right there. That's a miracle on the pitch. So I don't know. Not much else in the world of football to discuss. Not surprised Busquets is going. Still fingers crossed to see an MSN reunion at Inter Miami.
Awesome.
It would be amazing. But thank you guys for watching as always. Go check out our stuff on Vendetta Sports Media's website, our Twitter page, Twitch channel if you're watching there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching there. Keep updated with all of our stuff because we have everything covered around this world of sports. You got NBA draft coming up. NFL is always around. NHL draft shortly. And I mean, MLB season's in full swing. I've been following the College World Series, so that's going on. Sports is a great time, and sure, there might not be a ton of action going on now, but there's always some news covering. So stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, and we'll see you next week.